Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. Something walked into my room and watched me sleep. A little of my backstory. My mom always takes our cell phones away at night. I, at the time, was pretty bummed out, so I had an older iPhone that I hid and used it at nights. I live in a two-story house. I have 3 siblings. One sleeps downstairs, while the other 2 sleep in our shared room. 2 on the bottom bed bunk, me on the top. So my brothers were also bored and they decided to go downstairs with my older brother since he had the most electronics, TV, Switch and a PS4. My mom and dad have their room on the other side of the hallway while I have it on the opposite side. The stairs to go down are in the middle. So anyway, my brothers went downstairs to chill with my brother. I stood upstairs on my bunk bed just looking at random internet stuff. My parents used to have their door locked, and anytime their door was unlocked, it would make a little pop sound. So I was on my phone when I heard the pop. I, hiding a cell phone, tried to hid it under some covers and face the wall, my back facing the door. I heard footsteps coming out of my parents' door. They started heading to my floor. This often happens, but when it does, I'm not afraid, ever. I just stayed there and waited out, making fake snoring sounds. Well, this night, a feeling of fear rose through my body. I could feel my body getting colder, so cold. I waited for what felt like 40 minutes, waiting for the footsteps to start its way towards my parents' bedroom. I thought it must have been my parents, but this unnerving atmosphere was one of a kind. I then heard the footsteps begin. They headed towards the stairs. I could then hear the stairboards creak. I was scared now, for my brothers, since they had all the electronics, and if they heard the footsteps, they would have excused it as me coming downstairs. I then heard my dad, in a mad voice, arguing with my brothers. I couldn't make out the words, since they were muffled. After about 15 minutes of them arguing, I knew it was my dad because I could tell they were speaking Spanish, and my brothers barely speak Spanish to each other. I then heard 2 pairs of footsteps coming up. I wasn't scared this time because I knew whose they were. My 2 brothers came up and sat there on their beds. My other brother even asked if I was awake, and I hushed him because I didn't want my dad to know I was awake. He thought I was sleepy or something, and he went back on his backup phone. I was confused because my dad hadn't come up yet, and my brother was on his phone. I then asked him, "Where's Dad?" He looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I told him what I had experienced, and he skipped for a second. He then said with a fearful voice that he had also heard footsteps up here. He was coming up the stairs when he saw a black silhouette of a person. He said he told the figure, "Hey Dad," and it never responded. He said he reached out to it, and when his hand met it, it was warm. He then went back downstairs and excused it as him being weird. My brothers said they also heard footsteps, and that is why they decided to come back upstairs early. I was freaked out for that night. The next morning, I asked both of my parents if they were up last night, and both of them said they didn't leave their room. I never heard the door close again, and no more of those footsteps come back up, as if they stayed down there. Reddit, is there any logical explanation for this? I would like to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Willy Wormy123, the author. Subtle and not so subtle encounters at the funeral home. For the past 4 years, I worked as a funeral director and embalmer at 2 different locations and separate buildings, names omitted for privacy reasons and to keep intact my anonymity. In my line of work, of course, the nature of the work would be unsettling to most, especially the aspect of the tasks completed on the decedents themselves. As an embalmer, I performed some gruesome actions all for the betterment of someone's loved one appearance and their expectations during the viewing, during their visitation period. I'm telling you all of this to set the stage that I'm not scared easily from the unsettling, and I have a rock-solid stomach that could handle any smell or sight that we come across that any embalmer will see at some point. As there are 2 locations that I frequently visit for my work, I'll be labeling them 1 and 2, just for simplicity's sake. First location. Coming back from a dead cell at the hospital at 2 a.m. into 130-year-old funeral home with a decedent in the back of the van seems creepy enough to most, but is the reality that most people don't realize it's a fairly common occurrence. My first major encounter happened sometime after I arrived to the funeral home and started my normal embalming procedures. During the procedures, of course, I'm not paying extreme attention to my surroundings of the room. But I had noticed just nuisance of chill that wasn't normal, as I had embalmed many times before and never noticed nothing like it. I just shrugged it off and continued on. After I had completed, I walked into casket showroom, which is directly next to the embalming room, and flipped on the lights. And in the corner next to the end of 2 casket was a black mist that seemed to dissipate into the corner of the room. Plain as day, in the fully lit room, I was absolutely rocked by this realization that me and the decedent were not alone in the funeral home. Someone had been watching me the entire time. The second occurrence was when I was leaving one night around 11 p.m. after a long day of death calls and funerals. Every evening when we leave, we go room to room and make sure every light is off to save on the electric bill. I had sat down in my car and looked up into one of the rooms on the second level and noticed a lamp was on. I decided to not go back in and get it in the morning. No big deal, right? Yeah, I wish. The specific room was the location manager's office, and it looked as if the light was emanating from the middle of the room. Just some context, the lamp in question was originally owned by the location manager's wife, who had passed and also went through the same funeral home he worked at. He had brought it from home to use there in his office because it was no longer needed at his house. The next day, I went up there to check on the room and turned the lamp off. Only problem was that the lamp emanating the light the night before was sitting in the middle of his desk, not even plugged in. I was the first employee there that morning, and no one had been there during the night for any reason at all. Also, when seeing the lamp on the night before, I know the funeral home was empty because I was the last person to leave. Now, these 2 occurrences aren't alone, but they are the most notable, because I can't explain them away. There are several hundred times I've felt watched or something seemed to move in the corner of my eye. There has also been many times where I hear someone whisper hello or hey in my ear. They are so numerous that it's hard to keep when or how they happen straight, but I guess that's just baggage with the job. Second location. Context. At this location, I actually lived in the top of the funeral home for a period of 6 to 8 months. Because free room and board in a fully furnished apartment and the ease of being able to just wake up and clock in the morning without even having to drive anywhere is a luxury most people don't think about. The first happening was a subtle, but not so subtle moment. A few weeks into my initial move in to the apartment upstairs of the funeral home, I was sleeping in my room upstairs and was awoken by the sound of stairs creaking, as if someone was walking up them. It was 1 a.m. and I knew no one there but me, because usually when a death call happens, I know about them because I'm called by my answering service to go get them. At this point, I'm frozen in place. Like, who in the hell would be there at this time of night without me knowing about it? All of the doors are locked to enter the funeral home, and so is my bedroom door. The freezing continues until whatever is outside my door comes to it and knocks twice. I say nothing. After several moments of complete silence, the creaking starts again, but back down the stairwell. I sat totally silent the rest of the night, couldn't sleep at all. Nothing else happened, but I was absolutely rattled by that experience. Whatever that was, knew I was up there, and I didn't like that thought at all. I had no other choice but to continue to live there, because my financial position at the time, I couldn't really afford anything else. My second experience there was in the evening as well. I was eating a TV dinner in my kitchen there in the apartment. I looked up from my food and watched a doorknob turn and the door opened as if someone just walked through and shut it back. I just sat mouth agape and was totally flabbergasted. I was also there alone that night as well. No breezes or change in air pressure due to the other door closures could force to open and shut that door like it did that night. Finally, and the most recent, this post is being written on a Sunday. Yesterday, I was sitting on the couch downstairs on break during the middle of the day. I was alone again. Context: if there is nothing going on as far as funerals or arrangement conferences on the weekends, we keep the door locked and the lights off. I rose from the couch and was walking into the main hall of the funeral home, and I noticed a man standing in the doors to the funeral chapel. I said aloud to him, "Hey, you!" He didn't turn or say anything. He just walked away from me and turned the corner. I followed him into the chapel to try and get his attention. I rounded that same corner and found absolutely nothing. By this time, I was freaking out. The man was wearing a navy blue pinstripe suit with a white colored button-up, gray slicked back hair, and was about same height as me. He was an older fellow and was a little hunched over in the back. For references, I'm 6'2". I immediately called the manager of the funeral home, same as the other location, and told him what had happened and described the man. He told me that I had probably seen his old manager, who had also lived in the apartment that I did currently several years ago. Everything made sense in that moment. Any questions or requests for clarifications, just leave your comments below. I'll be checking and be more than happy to respond. Thank you, Accomplished Ad 4858, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please be safe.